Happy Wednesday night, everybody, and welcome to A Look on the Plus Side from the Park Adventurers Club. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside. Thank you guys for being with us on your Wednesday night. We appreciate you. We are tonight talking about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And normally what we do is we just talk about movies and TV shows that we find on Disney Plus, Hulu Plus, etc. But we are going to be talking more as we move forward just about movies and TV shows and specials that interact with the parks, whether it's something that was influenced by something in the park or whether it influenced the parks. And this is definitely one of those movies. So thank you for being with us tonight. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Park Adventurers Club. We do a lot of cool stuff. We'll tell you about it at the end. And then also give this video a like as it helps people to find us. And speaking of finding people, I found the coolest guy to talk to about this. It's Mr. Ron Deanna. What's going on, man?
Ahoy!
Ahoy! Oh boy, it started already. All the nautical nonsense. Yeah, I was actually going to open up talking about this being a whale of a tale, lads, and I tried to hold off on it, but it's gonna be into what we're talking about. Thanks for doing this with me, man. I appreciate it. You've seen this movie, I assume. I mean,
Yeah,
before tonight.
I watched it. I used to watch it a bit as a kid, um, and then I just watched it again for the first time in a long time for this. So I think like there's so many other versions of this and offshoot stories that I kind of forgot almost everything but the squid. You know?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you would bring that up because in doing some research, I found that they had to reshoot the squid scene, and apparently it was a good thing they did because I think most people associate this movie with that giant squid scene. So, what I want to do tonight is we'll talk about the movie itself, what it meant to the Disney company, talk about the movie, walk through it a little bit, and then we'll talk about like the attractions that have been inspired by this film. So this was 1954. I've got the stat sheet here, the stat board, because when I run through all these numbers, I always feel like it's better to see them in person. The runtime on this thing is 2 hours and 7 minutes. And Ron, I love a 90 minutes or less movie, so I was like, it's 2 hours and 7 minutes. But it's an epic film. It's a big deal film. It's not Avatar. So it was released December 23rd, 1954. So it's been around a while. The rating on this is G for general audiences. The box office was $28.2 million, and the budget on it originally started at 2.7 million, but they ended up spending 5 million again. Like almost a million of it was lost on that scene with the squid. And this is from Disney. This was actually one of the first big-time, full-length, no animation features that Walt did, so much so that he had to build new studios on his lot. A lot of the earlier live action he did, he recorded at, like in studios overseas or on location. And this one he built, like he used this as an excuse to build big sets. We look back, and we talked about Fantasia last week on our show, but we look back on things like Snow White and Disneyland as these things that no one believed in the project except for Walt, and he proved them wrong. Fantasia was kind of sort of a miss for him, even though it eventually gained, the respect that it has today. But I didn't realize what a gamble this one was.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know much about the history. I actually thought this might have been one of the ones that they filmed over in England, because of the whole thing. You couldn't take money out of England after the war with film. So I always thought this was one of those. I really don't know too much of the history about this because I was watching it and you said they built new sets, but were like any of the water tank scenes, were they filmed at Disney, or were those like, did they go and borrow the Universal
20th
like
century,
pool for that
which
20th
which is so
century?
which is so ironic now that they own 20th century. I feel like that they were borrowing their stuff because they had spent too much money on building the studios and the sets that they went over and did a lot of the water work. Some of it in the original place where the 1917 silent film was shot. It was like kind of on location, but the stuff they did in water tanks was done over at 20th Century Fox. So it's a good point. And the studios that they built were kind of like, the Walt Disney Studios as they were at the time in Burbank were really just animation studios and offices, etc. And so this is kind of the catalyst that had them do that. But it's so funny, Ron, to think that he was doing this At the same time, he was doing Disneyland because this released in 1954, and then July of 1955, Disneyland opened up.
Yeah, I mean, things just got done at an incredible speed back then. Like, I mean, Disneyland didn't break ground that much before this. Like, everything just kind of snowballed. And I mean, I don't know why. I don't understand why things moved fast back then. I mean, with more technology, I think things would move faster, but it just seems to slow things down in a certain way.
Yeah, some things get faster, like when your boss wants you the answer 5 minutes ago, as opposed to you have till the end of the day. And then some things get slower, like I don't know, Tron, Avatar, things we expect to happen a lot faster than they do. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of other guardrails in place too. If you ever watched that Disneyland Handcrafted, we did a walkthrough of that one and seeing so much like danger that was happening. They weren't being safe at all with their like the driving of the cranes and the fork the all the lifts and everything. And I think some of that happened here. I know that James Mason, who starred in this, was actually very close to dying because he got tied up in a cable that was associated with the squid in one of the scenes. And so luckily he made it through, came back, reshot the scene the next day. But I think that that's probably part of it too, is that it probably wasn't as much safety involved with it either. Regulations maybe is what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
I'm sure that's a lot of it. I mean, I'm still the kind of guy who will, take two chainsaws up a ladder, so I don't think that
Don't do
way.
that, Ron. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. So when I think of like Disney movies, like Disney live action movies, a lot of times I think about the screwball weird stuff, like the Cat from Outer Space, or even further back, That Darn Cat, or the Parent Trap, and stuff like that. This was really more of like a mystery epic movie. Like I was feeling like and by the way, I don't know that I've ever seen this all the way through. And I know that that is shocking, but there is so much material out there that it's like it's hard to watch all of it. I noticed that when we panned out that you have a poster for the original Fantasyland attraction up above you, so obviously you were a fan of this. But
Yeah.
um, I'd never watched it, but again, it stands separate from all of those other movies because it really, they had a big budget, they built huge sets, and it really, it's an epic as opposed to just being a movie. Would you
I
agree?
mean, this was the era of the Hollywood epic, like in the mid '50s when they were starting to compete with television. This is when you started getting things like, you know, Spartacus and Ben Hur and like the Great Escape. Like this era of the '50s to '60s, you got these long movies and epic scale that you couldn't do for television, and I think that's what spawned this because for a Disney movie it's really long, right? Like you said, it's over 2 hours, and I mean, Fantasia was over that, but I can't think of too many other movies that Disney produced, even a little bit like up and through like Walt's death, that would be this length. And I will say there were definitely some pacing issues, particularly in the first half hour of the movie, but it really does kind of once it gets going, it gets going.
Did you? It's funny that you should say that about pacing issues because pacing usually is a big issue for me, and in this one, I feel like there was maybe it's not as much pacing as I feel like there wasn't a lot of wasted stuff in this one. I mean, maybe the squid scene was a little bit too long, but again, that is the thing people remember about this one. Yeah, but I felt like the pacing was okay, but I get the vibe of
Well,
what you're saying.
maybe it's because I don't remember, and I know I've watched this like as a kid. I used to, I'm sure I had watched it on VHS a ton, but I don't remember any of the stuff before they encounter the Nautilus for the first time, right, on the ship. I thought that like opening scene where it's attacking the random freighter
Mm-hmm.
was that our main characters were on that boat. I forgot that there was this whole exposition to
Yeah.
get them there.
Well, and one of the things about that scene is it looks very redone from a scene we see later because the ship looks exactly the same now. Theoretically, freighters back then couldn't look much different, but I'll point that out in a second. But one of the things I noticed immediately is this is one of the older movies, so it's definitely now it was shot in Cinescope, so it's widescreen, but it's one of those where the credits are at the beginning. One of the things that struck me as soon as the credits rolled, and I don't know if you saw this one when you were watching or not, was special processes iWorks. I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, so was a part of this movie, which seemed as though they wanted to go so far out of their way to keep it from being an animated movie. I did think that was interesting that he was part of it. Now, special processes could be, there was like a scene where all of the islanders are on the ship and they electrocute them, and it looks like, I mean, that was animated worth the, so we could
Yeah.
see the electricity, so we know why they're shaking and jolting and jumping around. So maybe he was part of that. I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, he did the multiplane and all that, so it could have been any kind of compositing like technology could have come from him. And I mean, they could have been using stuff he developed. And I mean, Walt wasn't always the kind of person to give anybody credit for anything, but
What? All right. So this movie, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, is from a Jules Verne book. Have you read the original? I know you
uh,
read a lot more than I do. I just
no,
watch a
I've
lot of
never
movies.
read this. And I know there's also Mysterious Island in the series, and I don't know what the order they're supposed to go in is either.
Yeah. And because this is not animated, I was surprised it opened up with the book.
Yeah, as I said, I completely forgot everything before the the first attack because I think probably like fast forward through that as a kid, honestly.
No, that could be maybe, because it was probably right after the credits. You're like, let me get to where I see a boat. I did think it was interesting that it opens with this page of text, and we're supposed to read this page of text, but then later the professor is narrating. So it was almost like, why wasn't he narrating this? Maybe because we hadn't met him yet. Is that why? Because once he actually gets on the American ship, then he's narrating like from the crow's nest and all that. Like he's not like saying it out loud, but we hear him narrating. Um, it
Well, I
just
guess that's
it's
where his journals pick up from there. Like he's not going to be writing about this. Like he wasn't that interested in the quote unquote sea monster until it was preventing him from getting to where are they going? Was it Siam? Were they
Saigon,
saying Saigon?
Saigon. Yeah, yeah, true. So when it opens up with this, and you were just talking about this like freighter, but there's a scene later where the guys witness a freighter being like blown up, and I thought it was the same one. So in my head, again, when I'm watching this, I'm like, is once I saw it the second time, I thought, is this like a flash? Was this like one of those things where it goes? I'm wondering. I bet you're wondering how I got here. Like were we like see this in the beginning, but then the real reason for this is so that we can see this ship get attacked, and then we go to the town where which is San Francisco, where they're talking about like being afraid of this beast. So there's I don't know if the as the audience we're supposed to not know that this is a submarine yet, I guess, and that this could be some kind of a sea creature.
I mean, I don't. I mean, I think that's the narrative we're supposed to see, but like, I can't imagine even anybody in the 50s not getting it. I mean, that's obviously a sub, but like
Yeah.
the design of it. Let's just talk about the ship design for a second, because it is a fantastic like design of a ship. Like to make it look like a creature and feel like a sub, but feel steampunky before steampunk was a thing.
Right. No, that's a good point. Yeah, and honestly, and again, when we start talking about the attractions, the ones from Disney World basically were set to look like these from, or the one from the movie, whereas the ones from Disneyland were just submarines. But here's a look at the Nautilus from afar, and again, it is crazy cool how accurate the Disney World attraction ships were to the one from the movie.
Yeah. Need to get back out to Castaway to go snorkeling on it.
Uh, that's true. We're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about that too. So it starts in the town, and we meet Ned, who is Kirk Douglas's character. Who it's interesting, like the body shape that he has, because it looks like he's sort of like an old fashioned like bodybuilder. The way that his body was set, and they certainly took a lot of opportunities for him to take his shirt off, which I
Yeah.
didn't know was a thing they did back in those days. But it definitely happened a lot where he took his shirt off, and he he is just kind of this. He's a harpooner. He's this guy that he's just like he's a free spirit sort of a guy, and he's in the town, and this one guy comes up and's like, you know. Saying to everybody, hey, we've got to stay away from the waters because there's this evil that's out there. And then he kind of makes fun of the guy, and they kind of get into a fight, and he gets drug off. And then the other guys who are here, we meet the professor and his assistant, and then we find out that they're like experts in in the ocean, and maybe are there monsters, are they real? And it's funny to me that back in the day that they were still worried about getting misquoted by the press, like that was a thing that they were worried about.
I mean,
But
this is the beginning of that major press. Like, this is still like pre like Hearst and Pulitzer really taking over, but if it's supposed to be 68, so
yeah, and so then the guy or the guys, the professor and his assistant are in their room, and this guy from the government comes in and goes, "Hey, we hear you guys are trying to get to Saigon. We can get you there. It might take a couple months, but we want to use you as an expert on our ship because we're going to try to disprove that there are any real monsters, so that so that people feel safe to travel again or be in the ocean again." So he says that he'll get him there, but it may take him a couple months. And then that's kind of the whole setup of the thing. And now we're, then they get onto the ship. So I do think it's interesting that everybody else is dressed in this like dress blues, and they have the same beard and all that stuff once they get on that ship, except for Kirk Douglas or Ned. I also think his name is Ned Land. That's just it feels wrong. I don't know why.
well, it should be Ned C.
I don't know. It just feels a little too on the nose, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like he supposed to be like some all-star whale harpooner that just got
Yeah.
roped into this, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Um and so then our journey begins, and then they end up coming across the Nautilus when they see it blowing up another ship, and at that point they're lost at sea. They get onto the Nautilus, and then it feels like that's where it starts. And I think you talked about that at the beginning. Is like that's
Yeah.
what you remember is them getting on the Nautilus, and then what happens after that. I also think there's probably a lot more story that they could have told with this, but even in 2 hours, I feel like they packed as much in as they possibly could.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I feel would be a little more heavy on exposition if you did it today. Like just some of Nemo's motivation would have been talked about a bit more. Like we know kind of why he's doing it, but like what is his end goal? We don't really ever get anything. Like we don't get that much, and I think there would have been a lot more of that exposition if done today, rather than just kind of focus on like check out these cool undersea shots.
Yeah. No, you're right. Let's talk about the quality of the movie, though, because again, for 1954, I feel like this thing holds up pretty well. It actually got nominated for 3 Academy Awards in 1955: Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, and Best Effects. It actually won Best Effects or Best Special Effects So out of the three that it was nominated for, it won two of them. The other one being best art direction, set decoration, and color. And I think that it should have. It feels like they created the world. I mean, and I think it cost them a lot of money to do that, and they went out of their way to make sure that it got done. But I really feel like that they again for 1954 really did a good job on that. And then they of course went out of their way to make sure this was Cinescope. Apparently Cinescope was such a big deal at the time, and so new, that they only got one lens to use.
Yeah, one was the Robe was the first real big one. Would have been about this time, and that was once again to compete with TV. They switched from the 4:3 aspect ratio to the 16:9 or the 2.351, whatever aspect ratios they were doing. Like they just kept getting wider and wider to compete with TV. And I think one of the things that looks great and why things from this era age better than some modern things is, once again, practical effects have that weight on camera that they're still going to look like they were real, even if they weren't as believable. Like, however, like, you know, my daughter was she wanted to watch all the Toy Story movies recently because she saw the commercial for five, and I think she's seen bits and pieces of them. And so we started with one, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't want to watch this. The animation's bad." Like, to her, it's just so archaic.
Yeah. No, you're right. And again, the physical sets were very cool and ended up being something that they used at Disneyland and Tomorrowland as part of a showcase because they had them and they existed.
Yeah.
So why not?
And they had nothing else for Tomorrowland.
Nothing else for
I
Tomorrowland,
mean,
exactly. This is a thing, and again, I swear, I've seen pieces, but I do not think I had ever seen this beginning to end. So one of the things that really interested me was the portal that they used as a plot device situation for them to be able to look out and see when there was danger, or when when there was a problem, when there was something new to see. This window, which again, we'll talk about, this is featured at Club 33 at the Magic Kingdom. So I don't know that I knew that was something in the side of the ship. For some reason, I thought it was like at the front. But that was another neat effect that they were able to bring to this. So something else that everybody could get into. So again, I think from a view from a quality standpoint, I don't think they could have done anything better, really, for 1954. I don't feel like this needed a Lucas cut where they go back in and throw in some stuff. Even the squid fight, which again they had to reshoot that because when they shot it originally, they shot it during like a sunlight thing, and it looked so fake, and you could see the cables that they went with the dark, stormy sea invasion instead for their battle, and it looked pretty amazing, especially like the tentacle coming in the door. That was that looked pretty good for 1954, and pretty good in general. I keep saying for 1954, I think it looked pretty good in general. Let's move on to the cast, because I got to tell you, Kirk Douglas was great. And I'm always distracted by the fact of how much he looks like Michael Douglas, or Michael Douglas looks like him. And it's amazing to me that Kirk Douglas lived to be 103. I think he died in 2020. Wow. I don't know that I knew he was 103.
Yeah, I didn't know he was that old, and I forgot he lived that long. Like,
crazy,
but he
right?
kept acting for like, when was his last role? Like, wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I don't know, but again, he I think didn't he have a stroke at some point, and yeah, he was again, he did so many different things. His last role was in 2008 Empire State Building Murders. He was on Touched by an Angel. He was a voice on The Simpsons. Yeah, crazy. But again, 1916 to 2020. So that's a life well lived right there.
Yeah.
But he definitely gives a vibe and an energy, and he was at the top of his game when they cast him for this at this time. But James Mason is the one that just floors me how good he is in this. Like, I feel like he is. Now, you could tell me I'm wrong, but he is Nemo. He is so good in this one, and he was a British actor. The first thing I remember seeing him in was my dad took me when I was a little kid to see a movie called Heaven Can Wait with Warren Beatty. They've redone it a couple times. It was a remake, and then there's been a remake since then. But that one was he was basically like an angel, I think, that was trying to like take Warren Beatty into the afterlife. That's the first time I remember him, but seeing him in this, he was so good. Or
Yeah,
do you
he's
disagree?
no, he's good. I whenever I think of James Mason, I just think of Eddie Izzard's impression of him as God, and so that's what I come to. But yeah, it's you. This is who I think of Nemo. Like, obviously, like Connery's final role was a version of Nemo in an awful movie, so that comes too. But I remember him and think of Nemo as him, but his demeanor was not quite what I remembered watching, having not seen this in years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, for sure. Paul Lucas was the professor, and then Peter Lorre was his conseil, I think is how that's pronounced. And so they were kind of the main four from this, but I think Kirk Douglas and James Mason were like at the height of their careers. Disney probably paid a pretty penny. Most of that $5 million, or a good bit of that $5 million, probably went to pay for both of those guys at that time. But Peter Lorre, this was one of actually towards the end of his career. It's so funny seeing him because it reminds me of like every like I feel like Bugs Bunny used to use a character that looked like Peter Lorre because of
Oh
his
yeah,
eyes. He was and his voice. He was very um, imitated. I feel like.
yeah. He was iconic. Like he always, and this is kind of against type for him. He wasn't that weaselly. He was kind of more of a stand-up character. Like because Casablanca, I think, is he Maltese Falcon?
He was in both. Yeah.
Like very weaselly characters, and that's who I think of him. But this, he he just had a different air about him, and it's he still did it very well.
Yeah, he was. I guess he did a bunch of movies after this, but very quickly he died in '64. So it was about 10 years after this that he passed away from a stroke, actually. But he definitely gives me creepy vibes. I get what you're saying, but he definitely gives me. You said Weasley, but I feel like he gives me this like these creepy vibes when I see him. So,
Very,
um,
I think the modern equivalent might be Buscemi at times, just because of the eyes.
yeah, I guess I could see that one. But yeah, he started working when he in 1929, and then again seeing him in this may be the first thing. And I'm going to take that back. I was going to say this may be the first thing I've seen him all the way through in a movie for, but Casablanca would have been the first one because that one definitely was a movie that I used to enjoy watching. Um, so yeah, so that's the cast. I think they all did a pretty good job. I think it's weird looking back at some of these older movies. Sometimes they feel very stilted and stiff. I didn't really get that from this. I think between the acting and probably the directing, I feel like that everyone did a pretty good job when it came to that. Unless you again would disagree with any of that.
No, I think everybody was very on point. Um, Once again, I think there's like less exposition to give these characters the background than I think in a modern style film, but I don't think we needed it. I think it got it was just an adventure story, right? It wasn't this whole kind of sweeping epic of a story. It was the adventure was the focus, and it worked for that. And the characters played to an archetype, and they played it well.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I feel like they all did a good job. You kind of buy into their roles and what they do. The professor definitely seemed like he was, the guy who knows things and in charge. And Peter Lorre's character felt very, loyal, and yet at the same time, you know, somewhat brave. And
Trying to
like you said,
save the
it's stand up.
professor from himself.
You're right. Exactly. There's a lot of things like the whole like, sorry, I had to sock ya or something like that. That Kirk Douglas says to the professor at one point. I'm just like, okay, this definitely feels like it's the 50s. Um, but yeah. So again, the story is pretty self-explanatory. I feel like in most cases that they come across this guy Nemo, and he has just like any villain. I feel like he has misguided like a misguided mission. Like he feels very passionate in his purpose, and he feels very much on the side of right, and yet at the same time he's causing chaos to
Yeah,
be right.
and I think they walk the line of presenting him as the villain of the piece versus an anti-hero.
Hmm.
And I think they kept that line just in the right spot where you can sympathize with him, but he doesn't. But he's not our protagonist. And I think maybe having seeing Ned and the professor on the boat ahead of time helped with that.
Yeah. Um, he's very again a very complex character to have to explain in as little time as they did, because we don't really meet him until probably about 20 minutes into the movie. Um, a little bit further than that. When it opens up, though, I mean, when we first meet him and when they first get onto the Nautilus, they notice through that portal that they're having a an underground like funeral, basically like an underwater funeral. That we never really reference that later, do we? As to like who died and how and what they were doing. It's just kind of a thing that was happening.
Yeah, I mean, we know that they got shelled by the U.S. warship, and probably that's why Nemo was more mad at them. But he doesn't really discuss it that way. It's just that you know he would have probably he said you get the impression that he would have treated anybody coming aboard his vessel in the same way as the prisoners. But like also it's a confusing scene because there's like 8 people at the funeral or whatever. Like, but then the ship is full of like a complete crew at times like that weren't anywhere around. It just it was an odd scene and an odd setup to introduce us to the crew and left me with some more questions than I think it answered.
Yeah, no, I would agree to that. But again, it seemed weird. It seemed kind of just like we didn't need it. Although by them not being on the ship, they had the opportunity to climb into the Nautilus, look around, kind of see some things, and get a vibe for what was going on before the guys came back onto the ship. And then the part that happens next is Nemo decides he's gonna kill them all, and then he decides to let them live because he was testing them, and then he gives them dinner, but he is like boastful about everything is from the sea, nothing is terrestrial. Why isn't Disney done a meal like that somewhere?
Um, I think because no one's going to eat it. Like Ned's a sailor and he was, not into that. Like, but then again, like not at anywhere near the attraction. But I remember like in Paris, I had fish I've never seen on a menu else anywhere else. Like we ate at the whatever the Blue Bayou equivalent was there, and at the time they had barracuda on the menu, and I ordered it just because where
You love
else am I
Heart
ever going to get it? Hmm?
just because you love the band Heart? It was a joke. Sorry, Barracuda. Sorry.
Yeah, I get it. I
Well,
was supposed to see them once, but they canceled the show.
I'm sorry to like scrape at that wound. So they're having this fancy meal, and he's got his dinner jacket on, and they're eating. And every time they're about to eat something, he tells them again like how like, oh, this is made of like from something from a sperm whale and something from this, and it's just it's sort of a funny scene in a movie that doesn't have a lot of funny scenes.
yeah, like if Ned was a whaler, like I mean, at the time, like when Darwin, like they kept eating sea turtles and giant tortoises like regularly because that's what they had. And I would assume if he had been a whaler, they would have eaten whatever they could catch. So some of it, like if he, like I could see him like balking at the seaweed, but like, oh yeah, this was sea snake. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, no, for sure. I did think it was interesting. The cigars are made of seaweed, and then they just like feed them to the seal later. That was kind of funny too. Um, all right, so one thing I want to backtrack on is the song. The song, A Whale of a Tale.
Yeah,
And the funny part about this is it's just laced throughout the movie. It's like you hear it in like a slow instrumental, and sometimes you hear it in a fast, quirky way. We first are introduced to it when Kirk Douglas sings to the entire crew, "A Whale of a Tale," um, and it's I know I've heard this somewhere else, other than say at I've heard it at. I feel like I've heard it at a Disney park somewhere, and I don't know where other than at like the attraction itself. Does that make sense? Like I don't know if I heard it
it's
like at Mermaid or I don't know.
it's a famous song. They use it a lot of places, and I think almost anytime they needed a sea shanty, they went straight to that. Like if they had the Wellerman back then, maybe they would have used that. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, it is definitely an interesting song, to be sure. But we just hear it throughout and I don't think there's anything. There's not, to my knowledge, there's nothing that's like a Nautilus theme, really. I just feel like it's just this song is like interlaced with just a generic. I don't want to say generic, but like just with a musical score that doesn't stand out to me in any way.
yeah, no, it's the only thing the music, how much it was played in the movie made me actually like, wow, they just keep going back to it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And again, it was one of these things where it just kept coming and coming and coming. So there's a mystery here in the fact that there's some kind of thing that powers this ship, and they don't really tell us what it is. It's very like you can't look directly at it without special equipment. And they let the professor look at it through the special equipment as they all shield their eyes, but we don't really get to see whatever it is, and they don't really explain it. Right? It's just some special kind of energy or power that Nemo says the world's not ready for.
Yeah, I mean, I assume, given the time this came out and the fact that the first nuclear sub was named the Nautilus, I think we're supposed to assume that it was some sort of nuclear power, you know?
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah, but it's just weird that he has like this whole like you have to look at it uh thing. So another interesting scene that happens in it that I talked about, the dinner scene being kind of comedy, is so is the scene where Peter Lorre and Kirk Douglas go to steal the treasure from the sunken ship because they can't like get their act together and they're falling, and it's almost like slapstick under the sea kind of a thing. Um, I honestly think that entire scene we could have done without.
That was one of the pacing issues. Anytime they were outside of the ship, it felt me like it was paced poorly because they wanted to show off, that they actually filmed underwater. And
Yeah,
then this attack from what was probably a nurse shark. Um, I
maybe I don't know.
yeah.
But once
Let's
they
see
get
if I
out,
could.
yeah, it was very interesting. And then it's like I maybe the only thing I could think of the reason for it is to show the character of Ned as someone who's like money hungry or like a treasure seeker, because he's going after that instead of doing the farming that he was told to do. And then it kind of also maybe speaks to the character of Nemo to say, I don't care about those things. That's so trivial to us, we use it as ballast, like we don't really care about it. I mean, I guess
I
that's
Yeah.
the reasoning for that.
Is it supposed to give him a more noble, thing that he's not sinking these ships as a pirate, that he's doing it for another purpose.
Yeah, maybe. But then they go later and they kind of explain this when he takes him out onto the island and shows the professor these like slave traders and they're they're getting all of these materials and it's going to be used for wars and that's why he's going to stop them all and kill them all. Which the professor, I think that's where the professor turns the tide on how he feels about Nemo as a contemporary.
Right, and yeah, they're at Rora Penthe, which I always think of from Star Trek Six. They named the prison planet there after that, but he keeps saying that hated nation, which I assume was supposed to be, the British Empire at the time, given the time period. But he also says all the ships they attack have no flag. So who is he blaming for what happened to him? And uh, all of that seemed like a bit of a weird inconsistency to me.
Yeah. No. The other thing that I thought was weird is the whole scene with the natives, the cannibals that come on board the ship. Like this one, again, that entire scene where he goes to the island and then comes and then they come back seems like we could have done without that, except for the fact that it introduces us to. And I sound like I'm backtracking on it, but I still think there could have been a different way to do this. It introduces us to the hull being electrified, which comes into play a little bit with the squid, but not enough. It's not the thing that takes the squid down, so why was that important? But then, like, this scene takes so long from them to get off the boat, to get onto the island, to then him try to get away, but then not. And then I guess it also speaks to why they lock him up, but I don't know. I feel like we could have done without that scene, that entire scene.
Yeah, like it just felt like everything was Ned was doing was specifically to like fill time or
Yeah.
some sort of weird exposition that wasn't there.
And then we get to the thing with the giant squid and the entire fight and like that's the money right there. That's the thing that they spent the most on. That's the thing that people remember is this entire scene is like that's the thing that people associate with it. And I don't know it chicken and egg. Do most people associate that with it and that's why they put it on the attraction? Or do most people associate it because it was on the attraction?
No, I think
It was in all
they
the
brought
posters and
it.
everything too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the attraction poster, but yeah, I think it's a memorable scene. It's what won them the effects. I think, uh, it was not really animatronic, but you know gave way to animatronics in the future, and it really does. I mean, the movements are obviously puppetry, but it still looks great.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had the legends of the giant squid. I don't think we had a full sample, like a specimen at that point yet.
No. That was yeah, that was but they seemed to know that like this was a thing that it was coming. They didn't seem too shocked like what is that? They were like, "Oh, it's a giant squid."
Yeah,
Like, here comes that. They didn't seem to be too thrown off by the fact that that exists. Anyway.
especially since they were deeper than they would ever been before at that point, like a mile deeper. Like
Yeah.
he said, he was over 5,000 feet below what the subnormally was, and I'm just going, oh, that's a good crush depth on that.
You know, they talk about most of the time being 10,000 feet or 10,000 leagues. And then in that one, they say it's an additional 5,000 leagues than they normally would. But do they ever say
No,
20,000 leagues?
okay, leagues are a measure of distance. Let's just get that out of the way. A league is three
Let's get it out of the
miles.
way. Like,
So they
let's
traveled 60,000 miles. If you went 20,000 leagues down, you'd go through the core of the earth and be a third of the way to the moon almost. It's uh so it is really how it travels, because I always remember just first time like you measure depth in fathoms, you measure distance in leagues.
Fathoms below. Remember that? Remember that from Little Mermaid? That was a thing.
Yeah.
Then where's the titular line, Ron?
I I don't think we needed it.
Okay, if you say so. All right. So again, this was a um, this was the big scene was the squid. Then they go to the island because they are going to like which is Volcania. They're going to the island so that they can do something. And when they get there, Ned's plan has come true. That all of these bottles he threw out, telling people where Volcania is, they've shown up, and now they're going to be there. Now there's trouble, and it's not the good kind of trouble. And then once all that
Yeah.
is happens, he's like, "Well, now I'm just gonna have to blow this up." But we don't really know what he was blowing up, right?
I thought I thought the whole part of Nemo was saying he doesn't want to do anything on land, but he still has this base that obviously has like nuclear reactors and all kinds of technology that he's just kind of leaving behind to go out on his mission to stalk the ships coming in and out of a prison camp, but it's disturbing enough that it's also blockading the entire Pacific sea trade. There was some definite questions in that whole area to me.
Yeah, I think so too. But it just didn't. It seemed like they didn't get into it enough. And you were talking about Mysterious Island, like that's kind of Volcania is sort of Mysterious Island. Maybe it was supposed to be Jules Verne continuing it, and that maybe he never fleshed out what it was. Jules that again probably should have read the book. Didn't. But as far as the movie goes, I felt like it was very unclear as to what it was that was so important for him to blow up there. And then once he does, he goes, he takes the ship back out, it gets stuck, but then he's like, okay, guys, we're done. Like go to your rooms and die, drink the Kool-Aid, we're over. This is where it all ends.
It got very cult leader. I mean, he kind of already was that they were all following him
Yep.
through this whole mission, but that very much became like Jim Jones moment right there.
Yeah, and then the professor and the and Ned are like, no, we're not going to die here. Like we're not dying. Like you guys have some kind of like a suicide pact, but we're not going to be part of it. And so thank goodness the boxing of Ned Land comes out into play, and he fights his way out. They get out of the boat. He ends up having to sock the professor to get him out. Who wants to go back for his journals? And it's like, you haven't been at sea that long. Can't you just rewrite them? Remember, like how?
There's also this sense of time. Like, how long were they gone? I feel it had to have been months,
Hmm.
but we really don't get that other than how long they traveled.
Yeah, no,
Like
that's true.
when he says the 10,000, and that was a what like halfway through their time together, and then they escape on like the dinghy, which I don't know how docking a dinghy that way would not fill with water.
Because they pulled um, the little lid over top of it, right? And which looked like it was very fake-ish. I don't know, but yeah, but it looked cool the way it docked with it. I mean, that was kind of neat. So this was a
Yeah,
weird
no, it's
scene with him reaching up to like open the door one last time. Like I don't. This seemed weird. Like he wanted to look out upon his death at the bottom of the sea, I guess. I don't know. But he's been shot. He's going to die.
yeah,
The rest of the guys didn't need to die, but they were like, we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to go back to our rooms, drink the Kool-Aid, snap the cyanide pill, whatever it's going to take just to get out of this and be done with it. So then the thing sinks down to the bottom and it's over. And the fellas get away and it's the end. So, I mean, and
very
then
anticlimactic. I think.
yeah, the island blows up, which I'm sure was not a cheap effect for them to do back in the day. Maybe it was. Maybe they just blew up like a model or something. But um, yeah, it was a quality explosion that they did there and blew up the entire island, and Volcano is gone, and the Nautilus sinks, and Nemo is gone, and these guys made it out, and all is happy. Um, so let's, before we get to a final thought on this one, I want to pivot, like I was talking about at the top of the show, and talk a little bit about the attractions that were inspired by this movie. What effects did it have on the parks, and et cetera, et cetera. But before we do that, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. You guys are great. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and make sure to tell your friends, and also give us a thumbs up, as it helps people to find us. But before we move into that part, Ron, I'd like to ask you a few trivia questions if I can, because I know it is your favorite part of our show. So I got 5 questions.
Yeah.
I know it's your favorite. Don't even have to pretend like it's not. I have 5 questions for you. It's gonna be great. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be easy because it's 20,000 Leagues. It's a 1954 film. Obviously, you know lots about it. The first thing I was gonna ask, you already know the answer to, because I heard you say it earlier, but it was the question that I had. What year does this take place?
68. Well, it starts in 68, so we have no idea how long it goes.
Yeah. 1868, yes. We know that because it opens up on the book. And I was going to ask you this, but I think it's too hard a question. Do you know what it opens up in the book, and it says chapter 1? Do you know what chapter 1 is called?
No.
Okay, I won't ask you that. It's called Alarming Rumors.
Oh.
That's the name of chapter 1. When they're on the U.S. ship, the captain rallies everybody in the captain's quarters, and they're talking about the fact that they have combed over square miles of ocean and have decided there is no beast out there. When they're in that room, that captain's quarters, there is a picture of a president on the wall. What president is on the wall?
Lincoln.
How did you know that?
I did notice it, and I thought about it. I'm like, well, yeah, he would have just been assassinated, and just
Okay.
the right time period.
There you go. All right, 2 for 2. What is the name of the seal?
Esmeralda, or Esme, I think they call her.
Yep, correct. You're blowing through them, man. Nemo has something like an emblem on his hat. What is the emblem?
I have no clue. I watched this one on a iPad, so I didn't even have a big screen to look at.
Oh. I don't want to get more specific than the fact that it was an emblem, because I feel like that would give it away, but it is an N.
Oh, it's just a Nautilus then? Okay.
It could be for
Nemo,
Nautilus, it could be for Nemo, but yeah, it's an N on his hat. And it's so funny that Esmeralda has the same insignia on her collar.
Yeah, not cultish at all.
Well, I feel like it is. You're saying it's not? Okay. All right. Never mind then. All right. So 3 for 4, not bad. Here's the last one, and I feel like you'll probably get this. So in the song "A Whale of a Tale," in the end of the first chorus, or in the chorus, the last line of it is, "I swear by my blank." What is that? I swear by my what?
I swear by my tattoo.
Correct. That is correct. I thought I was going to get you on that one. I don't know why, but obviously you know the words to that one. So 4 out of 5. That's pretty good, man.
I was going to go back. I ran out of time, but I was going to go back and try and find what the coordinates. Ned.
No.
You've done that kind of stuff.
Not unless it made a lot of sense. Like if it was a license plate that was obviously supposed to be something, but like if the coordinates didn't really mean anything, I don't know that I'd have been that mean. Maybe I would have. I don't know.
All right. This one I didn't. I only caught because I had the subtitles on. But the 2 girls on Ned's arms during the first scene we meet him. Did you get their names?
No.
Minnie and Daisy.
No, really?
Yeah.
That is so
and one's
cool.
in pink and one's in red.
That is so cool. No, I didn't get that. I did end up turning on the I don't usually watch with captions, but I did end up turning the captions on near the end of it because I wanted to try to pick up on some stuff. But no, that's you know what it was? I was trying to figure out the shorthand of what they were calling the seal, because they were calling, like they said, Esmeralda, but it sounded like they were saying something different. But you nailed it. It was Esme, like, which apparently you saw because you were watching with. I see now. I feel like maybe the captions gave you too many answers, but you got it either way, and you killed. So thank you for playing along. Thank you guys for playing along in the chat. I see everybody playing here. Apparently, a bunch of them knew it was an N, so I see that there. All right, so let's talk about the attractions. So the first attraction that happened, we talked about a little bit, was that if this was 1954, this came out. 1955, Disneyland opened, and as you mentioned, Tomorrowland opened, and it was basically just like a field of like advertisements, because they didn't
The
really
bathroom of
build.
the future, the milk bar, uh, like I was thinking about picking paint. I can't even remember all of the things because they just cycled through them so quick until '59 when they really redid Tomorrowland the first time. But yeah,
Monsanto
they had the
Future, or was
that
something
came
else
later.
Monsanto? I think Monsanto did
Yeah,
something when they opened up. But yeah, it was a lot of like, and again, when we watched Disneyland Handcrafted and talked about it on an episode a few weeks back, we saw that they were, at the end of it, Tomorrowland was just kind of a shell. Like they didn't really know what to put in it, and they put so much work into things like the Jungle Cruise and other attractions that they didn't have anything there. So in 1955, they opened up the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like it was basically like a walkthrough with the sets that existed, and they put it in Tomorrowland because they felt like at that time, well, obviously they needed something to put into Tomorrowland, but they felt like at that time that that submarines and under the sea was sort of a like new frontier and of tomorrow.
yeah. I mean that made sense. And one of the things I think Disney World got gypped on that a lot of Disneyland, in particular, I think Paris still does it very well, or when I was there, did it very well, were these walkthroughs. Like every land seemed to have one. We'll get to that obviously in a little bit, but like
Right.
I, th- I think those walkthrough attractions, as just a distraction, are a good thing, and I think we miss that a little bit. I think like Epcot has a few good exhibits like that, but the Magic Kingdom doesn't.
Yeah. No, that's true. Disneyland had walkthroughs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the castle walkthrough, the fort, and Disneyland Paris has a ton of them.
Redwood Creek River Challenge, or
Yeah. What do we have? Just the treehouse is kind of it.
right, and they have that too out of Disneyland. That's a good point. And well, I mean, Maharaja Jungle Trek and Gorilla
Right. I,
Falls.
I think they do them more in the learning parks, I guess. Because you have One Man's Dream, you have, you know, Morocco, Mexico has like the little art, Japan has it's been
Museum.
what, Kauai for years now. The Shanghai Disneyland exhibit. Like they do things like that, and I think Disneyland itself had like the stockade. Like I guess Tom Sawyer's Island had a lot of that stuff in the back of,
Remember Tom Sawyer's Island?
in the fort.
Yeah.
Um, kids, check it out.
Yeah. Well,
um,
or go to
but we were
Disneyland
actually
because you can still see it there.
what one thing I do want to say is if you really, it's years and years and years old now, but it was Wedway Radio did a really good podcast series probably over a decade ago now on Disneyland 1.0, and they talk about all those original attractions in Tomorrowland, and it's really cool just to see like Space Station X1 and all these weird things that were there. It's just nuts on how little thought went into Tomorrowland because it was the last thing that they had to finish.
Yeah. Well, so then after that was over, they did this submarine voyage, and the thing is that I never got to do the original submarine voyage. And so in looking back at it, I know that one of the things that I think it was 8 different subs, and they looked like subs. They didn't look like the Nautilus. And so when that happened, I know that they're like, I think it was like the Soviet leader was going to come and couldn't come to Disneyland, but Walt wanted him to because he wanted him to see how big his subfleet was. Um, and so they had the submarine voyage at Disneyland, and it was there for a while. And in my head, I thought what they had was 20,000 Leagues, but it wasn't. Like it wasn't Nemo, Captain Nemo. It wasn't any of those. It was just the
Yeah.
submarine voyage. With actual what looked like submarines. So here's a look at what the original submarines looked like back in the day. I've started collecting these Disneyland cards, and I noticed that there's a section called Then and Now, and in it has Then, and it has Submarine Voyage, and the Submarine Voyage was there from 1959 till 1998, and then it was closed for a while. And they thought, oh, we're going to do an Atlantis thing, which then Atlantis kind of bombed. They thought they were going to do a Treasure Planet sort of thing, and that movie kind of bombed. And so then John Lasseter spearheaded the Finding Nemo submarine voyage, and it reopened in 2007 as the Finding Nemo submarine voyage. So it was closed for a while. People thought like it may never come back. And it's supposed to be very expensive for them to maintain because they've got underwater animatronics. It's a large body of water. It's a large space of land. I know that when Star Wars was first purchased, and there were rumors that they would take over this entire area and do maybe like a speeder bike race attraction or
Yeah.
something like that before they ended up doing Batu, which it would be a shame. But at the same time, like the people mover still goes over top of this. Like that doesn't need to happen anymore. Either bring that back or like pull that stuff down. I don't know. But yeah,
The
the
monorail
submarine
goes
voyage,
through. It's this
yeah,
whole like
like a
that
kinetic energy.
59, yeah, to 67 Tomorrowland. Like I'm wearing the shirt. It was just amazing, and I wish I had seen that. I didn't get to Disneyland until '95, and I didn't get on this because I only had one day. And at that point, we thought 20,000 Leagues might still be coming back at World. It had just closed, so there was just I never got to do it there till Nemo came out, but I love that Tomorrowland, that era of this with all that energy, because here you saw the subs you saw so much of them above the water compared to you know World.
Yeah, no, you're right. Um, then again, when Walt Disney World opened in 1971, they opened up they did a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But the reason that they did it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea at that time was that they couldn't put it in Tomorrowland anymore. In the 70s, it was no longer like the thing of tomorrow to have a submarine. So instead, they put it in Fantasyland and gave it the fantasy of being a part of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So
Well, and it
you're
was
making
supposed to kind
faces.
of be it was designed to kind of be the transition between Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, even though the teacups were kind of in front of it, like between it. But as you walked around the edge, because don't forget how much further back on Tomorrowland Speedway went, like all of what is now Storybook Circus was still extra track, so you would walk around all that right to the edge, so it kind of abutted both lands.
Yeah. And then that attraction closed, and then it was supposed to be refurbished, and then it was supposed to be closing, and then it never came back. So it was down
And,
for from I think it's 89 to 94 when they finally were like it's done.
I mean, I think it operated beyond 989, but I think it was 94 was finally finished, because the story was that you know upper management wanted to bring it back, but Disney World management didn't want to pay the maintenance. And so when Michael Ovitz came in and he's like, "Oh, I want to see the ride," they put him on the leakiest subs just so he would say, "Yeah, scrap it."
The original attraction, I don't I remember riding the original one at Walt Disney World, and I remember being afraid of it because it seemed scary to me for some reason. Like, I don't know what I'm getting into, and I'm going to be under the ocean, and this is weird. And then you get into the sub, and you go down these stairs, and then you go and sit on these little seats that drop down, and you look out a portal, and it's like many things at Disney or even Universal. The attraction is based on something has gone horribly wrong, whether it's Jaws or Tower of Terror or something has gone horribly wrong. And that's what happened here, is that, like, we've got to dive, and you hear all these noises and things, which must have freaked kids out. I feel like I was freaked out as a kid.
I only remember doing it once. What I remember was it was always the longest line in the park, just
Because
because
it's
it
low
has that
capacity.
low capacity. People want to do it. Um, and yeah, I remember my parents would always go, "No, we're not waiting on that. No, we're not waiting on that." And I only remember ever getting on it once.
Yeah. So then when that one closed, the one in Disneyland, like I said, there was some time period where it was like, oh, are they going to open it? Or are they not going to open it? And then they finally opened it as the Nemo subs, which is a calmer, kinder sort of experience. Like, right? It's like a little bit more fun, silly sort of a thing, because you're going and you hear, Nemo and friends
Yeah.
under the water. So then we go back over to Disneyland Paris, and like you said, there's a Nautilus walkthrough that they have at Disneyland Paris, which I have a picture of right here. I don't think when I went, and the one time I went, I did the Space Mountain there, but I don't think I did this attraction. But you've done this?
I think I walked through it a couple times because when I was there, uh, I was there for 2 days, and the park was pretty empty. So I did almost everything other than like Crush's Coaster multiple times in those 2 days. Like we were just killing time, and I just remember walking through it both days we were there, just because hey, it was cool and got not much else to do. I've done Space Mountain, like their early entry. I think I rode Space Mountain like 5 times with the early entry. Like so, just whatever, just kind of go check it out.
Yeah. Well, it was that. I mean, again, it's very cool that at that point it still was something that they brought to that park. That you know that park opened in what 1992, I believe. So it had been a while, and after these other attractions that they were actually going to do something. Um, and then they made an attraction at Japan, which is actually in a big mountain, which is like the mysterious island, and you go inside it. I don't mean to rub this in because I've just recently been. Have you been to Tokyo Disney?
No, I have not. It's definitely on the one of these days list, but never been out there. Um, and I kind of know it. I know it's a dry for wet experience,
Mm-hmm.
and like you look through bubbly windows.
Yes, that is correct. So
Is it like an
for
omni mover?
mm, it's like an individual car that you get in. I'm not sure I would. It's not Omnimover because I feel like Omnimover would be like a continuously loading attraction. But you get in something and there's 4 different seats, so each person, or you got 2 people on each side of like basically a box. And each one has like this see-through window that has the bubbles in it. And yeah, when you go through, everything else inside is dry, but you're hanging kind of like a Peter Pan attraction, so you're
I've
hanging from a
tried to
rail at
watch.
the top.
I think I tried to watch a video of it once, and it wasn't very clear in the video how it operated.
One of the cool things though is when you get into like the mysterious island and look around, everything's got that Jules Verne steampunk vibe to it. When you're in there, so like there's a Nautilus in there that's under like kind of partially up. You that this round staircase you see here, or this ramp, this is what takes you down to the 20,000 Leagues attraction. So Journey in the Center of the Earth is at the top, 20,000 Leagues is at the bottom of that. This boat ride goes through very similar to the way that Nemo's sub kind of came through the bottom of the mountain when they came into that little harbor area. But it is massive. It is absolutely massive, that whole thing. And then the attraction itself, like I said, it's sort of just a, it is a dry ride, but it's supposed to be like you are going into you know, going under the sea. So, yeah. And then there's also a reference to this at I mentioned the Club 33 at the Magic Kingdom. They have a bar, and behind the bar, it looks like that portal window that you see there, and you'll see sometimes some things come by and things happen in there, which is kind of cool that they have that there. But it's a shame that it's kind of behind the ultimate paywall and that not everybody gets
Yeah.
to see it. But you know, to me, that's why that is the best of the Club 33s. Here, like the one in Disneyland, the original, I would love to go someday. I've never been inside. That seems like that's walk in Walt's footsteps. That's the original. That's the OG. That's probably like the Mecca. This one, though, with the four that they have in Florida, this one seems to me to be the best of the best, but mostly because of that experience. Um, and then, like you
Well,
mentioned earlier, they took some of the original subs from the Walt Disney World, uh, um, 20,000 Leagues, and they took at least one to Castaway Key and sunk it so that you could go down and like kind of scuba dive around it. I did go out when I went on my very first cruise. We did go snorkeling, and I did go out just to see it. I think I had my son on my back on the way there to like swim out that far and basically drowned. But it was definitely worth it to see that. So there's another place where it kind of lived on for a little while. And that was kind of a cool thing. But again, a lot of
you got
influence.
Grotgado.
The what?
Trader Sam's
Yeah.
has, the squid, above the bar. And not to mention the Nautilus drink, which I've seen Patrick down one by himself. Uh,
Good point. Yeah. He
and
probably just
then,
wanted the tiki mug. That's probably why he did it.
oh, yeah, I think he was making little steam sounds as he was driving the mug around the table, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Um, and then I believe is it the treasure or I think it's a treasure, not the Destiny, that has the pub is 20,000 Leagues themed, right?
hmm Uh, maybe that one I'm a little bit sketchy on. Um, but I do know that the original Nemo organ
Is in the
from
mansion.
is in Mansion in California.
Yeah.
Were you? I know you worked Mansion in Florida. Were you always jealous that the real one lived in California? And this is the one that Victor Geist plays. This is not the self playing piano in the library. This is the one that we see in the ballroom scene, right?
Yes, I believe so. Um, I never really thought about my, because I think there's also a rumor that it was the organ. I remember at one point, when I was there, there was no real internet to confirm all these things. It was all just like rumors and stuff. So I also remember hearing like someone once told me like the one in the tree house was the one from that. I'm like, no, it's way too small, first of all. Um, but yeah, never really jealous of that part. Our
Uh,
our mansion's better.
So, with all the stuff that's happened with all of this in the park, and the fact that this came out in 1954, I know that there was a remake in like the 90s that was like a Hallmark remake or something like that. So it wasn't even done by Disney. And then now if you go to Disney Plus, there's a TV series, but it's not in English. I think it's in Spanish. And it's like a 6 episode TV series about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Because I looked at it and I remember there was a rumor that they were going to be making a new TV series. I didn't. I guess I expected it to be sort of an American version of it.
Wasn't Will Smith attached to a version at some point? Or am I making that up?
I mean, you could make it up and I would believe you, but I do know that there was a Big Thunder Mountain pilot that was made at one point when they were all into, we made Haunted Mansion, we made Pirates of the Caribbean, we made Mission to Mars. Like, let's make another tie-in movie, and they were going to do Big Thunder as a TV series, and then that didn't work out. But this one is interesting. Like, Again, this is Disney 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So it came out in 2025. It has one season. It has 6 episodes. They're all about 20 minutes long. It is not dubbed. So, turn on your subtitles and watch it. But and it's sort of this
Wait,
modern day situation. What were you gonna say?
can you scroll up a second? Is that episode 1 Finding Nemo or L Finding Nemo because it's in Spanish?
It says Finding Nemo 1. So it's
Okay.
Finding Nemo, the capture, mutiny. Yeah. So anyway, are you surprised though that they haven't put something together? Because again, it feels like Disney has taken care of this or knows the fans love this particular IP. Why wouldn't they do something else more significant with it?
Because what are you going to add to it? I mean, if you make it too much like the novel, it's not going to be, people are going to, say it's not the original. Maybe this is one of those you got to wait for the boomers to die off a bit that grew
Wow.
up
Okay.
on it.
Yeah.
But I think that could be part of it. I think it's also not, it's a hard story to do. And I think any way you're going to play with it is going to upset somebody.
Yeah. No, that's true. I know that Jay Ware, our friend Jay Ware, who is also, I believe, in chat, was when I asked this question earlier about in our pack Discord, and we love our pack, the Park Adventures Club. When I asked him about this, he had a lot to say about the original attraction and the fact that it was kind of the first original attraction at Disney World to go away, a major attraction.
I mean, you had Mickey Mouse Review closed down before that.
Well, it moved,
Yeah.
right? It went to Japan for a while, Mickey Mouse Review.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those things where I think at that time, and I know that they always say, well, the parks can't be a museum, but there were things that you feel like with tradition that you would keep around. This one I know was an expensive thing to keep up, and that's why they ended up making it an aerial meet and greet for a while, and then they paved over it
Well,
and they
even
made it.
before that, the queue was just a meet and greet.
Mm, yeah, that's true.
They used that since almost like day one. They took it down.
And then they made the grotto in the
Um,
back with the King
yeah.
Triton in there, and then they paved over the whole thing, or they gutted it out, and they made Pooh's Playful Spot, which was a little Winnie the Pooh play area out of that. And then when that was there was a big tree, and in the tree was a nod to the Nautilus. It was like a carved version of the Nautilus inside the tree. Then that tree's been
And
moved, and now it's over in front of the Winnie the Pooh attraction. And then they made New Tomorrowland, which now there's also a nod to the Nautilus in the queue for Ariel.
yeah, is it still in the tree? Did you
I
say?
think it is. I think it when
Because
I
I don't think I can get in there to see it.
I believe it is still in the tree. So I think if you stick your head in there and you turn around, and you look back up at the back of it, you can see that it's there. And then the other one for Ariel is like before you get to Scuttle, when you're still outside, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see it in the rockwork. The Nautilus.
I always try and see it, but I only remember ever actually finding it once. Like someone had to point it out to me.
You have trouble finding Nemo? Sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
It was the Nautilus. It's not Nemo. Yeah. So I mean, again, this has a lot of history, not just as the movie, and but also in what it means to the parks, which again is where we kind of want to go with this moving forward. So, anything else to say before we give final opinion on the movie?
No, I think we've covered all of that.
Okay. So let me just kind of thank everybody for being here. Appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for being in the pack, the Park Adventurers Club. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to patreon.com/GoPack. Thank you guys. Here are Zebra Mezzanine and Treasure Room supporters. We appreciate everything you do. Helps us to do the content that we do. So thank you guys for your support very much. Also, we do a lot of content. So this is a look at our calendar. We did trivia last Friday night. We did last Sunday night. We did the Park Adventurers Club, which is our weekly park series. We did it on Japan. speaking of, and we talked. Annie and I talked a lot about our thoughts and opinions and information about what you need to know before you go to Japan, to Tokyo Disney specifically. So check that out. That was last Sunday night, and it's up on our site now. And then here's tonight where you're at. Look on the plus side. Then this Friday night we're doing Castaways with our friend Charlie, who did actually was a skipper at the Jungle Cruise in Disneyland. So he'll talk a little bit about that. And then next Sunday night, we have another episode of our park show. But like I said, we're kind of modifying what we do with this show. And so each of them coming up, we're going to talk about the movie, but we'll also talk about the effect that it had or the influences back and forth between the movie and the park. We're going to talk about Beauty and the Beast, the animated movie, Dumbo. We're going to talk about Tower of Terror, even though it's not on Disney Plus. It should be, but we're going to talk about the Steve Guttenberg, Kirsten Dunst Tower of Terror, and then also the Three Caballeros. So we got a lot of stuff that is very movie and park tie-in. And if you guys have suggestions for that, just hit us up in the Discord. If you're in the Discord, we would love to know what kind of things you'd like to talk about. Hopefully, Ron, you'll think of something that you would like for us to do that we haven't done before. And then I feel like the guardrails are off. I think if we want to do something that's a universal thing, I think we can do that as well. So dig deep. Think about what you want to do that would tie into the parks, because I love the idea of tying the two together. So that's what we'll do moving forward here. But now is the time, Ron. Now is the best time, because you are the aficionado of all things Disney in your community, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, Ron, this looks like your kind of movie. It's called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I was thinking about watching it. The big question, knowing what you know, even putting your own feelings aside, Ron Deanna, would you recommend this movie?
I think I would have to, just as a classic. I said I think it's got some pacing issues, and I think it's got some story issues from a modern perspective, but it is not just a Disney classic, but a classic of film in general. As we said, it won effects Oscars and features classic actors. I think anybody who's into film as a concept more than just like I like going to the movies would really get something out of seeing this. And definitely from the parks people, it's there's so much there beyond what we typically think of about like the story and things like that this movie excels in, that it should be watched.
Okay. You know what? I again, I don't think I've ever watched this one beginning to end. I've enjoyed the attractions that we talked about in the park. I have a basic reference of the Jules Verne book and the story of Captain Nemo and the Nautilus. So I enjoyed going back through this one, and I was pleasantly surprised to know that it still stands up, that it's still enjoyable. A lot of times we'll go back and we'll watch something that's like, wait, what is this? And maybe it doesn't stand up, or if it's something I used to love to watch, like there was a TV show called The Greatest American Hero that I used to love when I was a kid, and I go back and watch it, I go, ugh, this one kind of hurts. Ron's off screen laughing. But
Oh,
again,
believe it or not.
oh, Joey Scarberry. But this one stands up. This one's still, I think, a Disney classic. And knowing again, looking back at the history of what Walt risked at the same time he was doing the new park, and knowing that it paid off, and now this is part of Disney history. I think there's a lot of movies that it's nice to be able to go back and watch and then have them as references when you go into the parks. So I don't think it's just that here. I do think that this one is also a good movie on its own, and would highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't watched it already. But let us know in the comments what you think about it. Did you love it? Did you love the original ride, either at Disneyland or at Disney World? Or have you been, did we miss something when it came to the parks? Because again, there are a lot of little references, Ron, that you mentioned about the drinks and the grog and, or the grotto and all these other things, that it's like, there's so many references that you really, it helps you to know the backstory to be able to enjoy the parks more.
It's a 70-year-old movie that I don't think most people have seen, but it's still in the zeitgeist in that way.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. And again, there's a lot of stuff that we, when we go to the parks, that my son enjoys, like Star Wars things or Tron, but he doesn't want to go back and rewatch the movies. But then now that he's older and taking his friends, he has a whole list where he goes, hey, these are the movies we're going to watch before we go, because when we get there, I am answering no questions. You're going to know that this is from Tron Legacy, and you have seen Tron Legacy, and you understand that. And yes, none of us want to rewatch Avatar, but we're gonna, because there's a lot of things you need to know when you visit Pandora, the world of Avatar, and so on and so forth. So, and again, that's maybe something we need to revisit as well. Patrick and I, once upon a time, did a review of Avatar, but it does break my 90-minute rule by 2. So, but Ron, thank you for doing this. I always have fun because you always know, like, you have a deep knowledge of these movies and of the park. So I appreciate you being here and talking this through with me. And I hope you'll come back and do something soon. And also you travel a lot because you're a travel agent, right?
Yeah, I have a small family travel agency, Tomorrowland Travel Authority. You could find us at ttavacation.com. It's me, my wife, my sister in law, and Patrick, our friend here, has joined. So I think we're actually on in a couple of weeks to talk about
Your cruise, right?
cruise Patrick and I did. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So tune in for that. Thank you guys for being here tonight. We appreciate you. Make sure to like, subscribe, tell a friend, and come back for lots more content in general. But if you can't make it Friday for Castaways, come back Sunday at 8:30 for the park show. If you can't make it then, come back next week for another look on the plus side. Have a great week, everybody. We will see you next time.